Jamie Floyd, this is the best defense as we take the steady march toward closing arguments in the Phil Spector murder trial. We expect them to begin tomorrow with the prosecution standing first to meet its burden of proof, and then the defense standing up to remind jurors of that presumption of innocence and to remind them also of reasonable doubt, something the prosecution has to overcome. With all of that in mind, the science is very much at the heart of the defense case, so we've been taking a look back at some of the scientific evidence. To that end, let's look at more of the testimony of the important witness, Dr. Michael Baden.
Blood.
And was that tissue, to your knowledge, removed at the direction of Dr. DeMeo?
Yes, this was removed at the direction of Dr. DeMeo, and as I recall, around January of this year, around January of 2007, and around March, microscopic slides were completed and showed this to be tissue from the mouth and not blood.
Okay. And what was the significance of that, Dr. Baden?
The significance was that this was the left sleeve and indicated that when the weapon was discharged and material came out of the mouth, some tissue got on her left button so that that hand had to be up near the mouth.
Dr. Baden, with reference to this item, you looked at the clothing itself. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Were there other slides of other areas of the garment that were also looked at?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with reference to the slides that were taken at the autopsy, did you look at those actual slides at some point in time after the autopsy?
Yes, some time later, yes.
Okay, did you do that sometime in May of 2006?
Yes, yes.
And did they include the lung slides where the air pockets of the lungs?
The air sacs, yes.
Okay, and where did you see these slides at?
I think, as I recall, in Dr. Pena's office.
Okay, so you met in Dr. Pena's office. Was he present?
Yes, with Dr. DeMeo, and we made arrangements to look at the microscopic slides.
Okay.
And he was courteous in letting us in, but not you.
Okay. Maybe that was courteous, too. Dr. Baden, with reference to your overall review of all the materials that we've talked about, what is your final conclusion as to the manner of death, in this case as to Lana Clarkson, that occurred on the 3rd of February of 2003?
My conclusion is that Ms. Clarkson died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound of the mouth and spinal cord and brain, and that I would not put it into the make it a suicide, because her mental state, even though there are suggestions of depression and the circumstances coming to a stranger's house, would make me hesitate about determining her state of mind was to kill herself. I think she may have been playing with the weapon or looking at it or being reckless, and I would not classify it as suicide. I would just say it's self-inflicted.
When you say self-inflicted, that she held the gun and pulled the trigger?
Yes.
Dr. Michael Baden, and that is his key opinion for the defense, that this was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And remember, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. The prosecution has that burden, the defense working only to establish reasonable doubt as to what the prosecution says happens. All right, let's bring our guests into it, Eric Franz and our wonderful Julia Morrow, who's with us as well. Let me ask you both whether you think the science has done what it needed to do for the defense in this case, especially given those prior bad acts witnesses who keep coming up in every conversation. Eric Franz, first to you.
The science definitely did what it needed to do. It neutralized the prosecution science. It gave an explanation as to how there was blood splatter on Phil Spector's clothing, which otherwise was not something that could have been explained. Otherwise, he was too far away, according to the defense theory. So it neutralized the prosecution's theory by saying that she must have had blood in her lungs, she was still breathing, it spewed out, it landed on Spector, and that could have happened without him being the person that pulled the trigger. The physical evidence, though, the scientific evidence does not neutralize, though, the fact that 5 women testified and said that this man routinely and religiously, when a woman goes to leave his company, he threatens them with a weapon. So the physical evidence does not counter that. That's going to be an emotional and passionate argument to the jury to let them know, ladies and gentlemen, these 5 women came in here, this parade of horribles from the past, that's not what this trial is about. What this trial is about is what happened on that very day in Alhambra.
And Julia Morrow, as a former prosecutor, you probably appreciate better than I how counterintuitive that is for a jury. Those 5 women who testified didn't know Lana Clarkson. They weren't there on the night in question. And arguably, it's more prejudicial than it is probative. But now the judge has let it in. And to ask a jury to discount it, well, that's a tough thing for them to do.
Well, absolutely it is, Jamie, and quite frankly, I'm shocked that the judge did let it in.
Are you really?
I know in Philadelphia wouldn't have got in.
Yeah.
Certainly not the ones that I think some of the incidents were like 30 years in the past.
I think over a decade. Over a decade. But in California, the law is very broadly drawn.
Okay, well, I know in the courts that I've practiced in, there would be a great argument that it was more prejudicial than probative, and it wouldn't have gotten in. But of course, another thing the jury's going to look at, Jamie, is, okay, yeah, he might have done this, although some of these women, their credibility was called into question. He never killed any of these women, okay? That's like the huge red flag here. Okay, so he has a penchant for, you know, playing with guns with girls at his house. Well, he never killed any of them. And in this case, the scientific evidence, I think, and the physical evidence is so in the defense favor. And just the one point I want to make, Jamie, I think what kills the prosecution, and it was a point that Bodden raised, is that if Spector had been standing there with a gun in her mouth and pulled that trigger, her blood, her teeth, her tissue would have been all over him. And his hair, on his face, on his pants, on his shoes. They can't account for that. That's a huge hole for the prosecution. I think it's a problem.
I agree. I think that's their single best evidence. And of course, they've suggested that he tried to clean up, that there was a delay before he emerged, before 911 was called. And they made a little headway, the prosecution did, but there's still that jacket. And they haven't been able to explain that away. And it is their burden to explain it to the jury. So I think Julia hit it right on. And that part of the science may be enough to give more than just one juror reasonable doubt. Let me bring Stephen Escobar back into this. He is friends with Mr. Spector. Do you think your friend should have testified in this case? About 60% of our viewers earlier today said that they think he should have, that it would have helped him to take the witness stand. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it really was needed. I think the science kind of spoke for itself. You know, I don't think he could add any more to it. So.
Do you think, though, Stephen, that jurors, even though the judge says, look, it's a defendant's right not to testify, and everybody knows this, people watch cop shows, they know you have a right not to testify, a right to remain silent, but jurors kind of want to hear you get up there and say, I didn't do this thing. And if you don't, they think you must be hiding something.
Well, I don't know if I don't know. I'm not too sure. I mean, I'm sure they want the defendant up there always for entertainment value, of course, but I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think the science pretty much spoke for itself.
And so you are convinced that your friend is innocent of this crime with which he's been charged, Stephen?
Well, going by the science once again, I watched the whole trial objectively. I haven't, been on either side, but the only thing that the prosecution has shown me is that he acted some way possibly 20 years ago, like you said, with some other women that are still walking, talking, and breathing. And it's like you can't give an actor a bad review for, without seeing his movie for a bad movie he did, 10 years ago. So I don't, as far as I'm concerned, the prosecution, I was waiting for them to prove something that showed that he actually could be guilty. And I haven't seen anything yet. All they've brought up is something that happened 20 years ago.
So you feel they've proved a nice case of reckless conduct with regard to the 5 other women, but they haven't proved anything with regard to Lana Clarkson?
Yeah. I mean, the science, pretty much, how much closer can you get? I mean, how much more in-depth can you get, we saw a very similar, and I'm sure as a musician you'll appreciate this one, Stephen, very similar effort by prosecutors in the Michael Jackson case where they brought up alleged prior bad acts. These aren't prior convictions. They're just people coming out of the woodwork to say, hey, that happened to me too. Right.
And many people thought that maybe some of those folks who testified about things they say happened with Michael Jackson way back when, maybe that was true, but it didn't prove anything about what happened in this case. And perhaps the jury will feel the same way about these 5 women.
Well, they couldn't even really produce any police reports, you know, really, that, you know, or any arrests, you know, that were made. I mean, that's, you know, pretty much solid right there. I mean, if you had a history of being arrested for pulling a gun on people or threatening someone with a gun, I mean, that would show a different picture.
Yeah, yeah, and prior convictions have always been treated differently in the law than have alleged prior bad acts. All right, well, a very special thank you to Phil Spector's friend Stephen Escobar for being with us. Also to Julia Morrow for joining us on The Best Defense, and our friend Eric Franz. A treat to have you all. And right now we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. Up next, we've got the very latest on the Duke case. That's right, disgraced Duke prosecutor Mike Nifong in big legal trouble. And we've got